No, looks fantastic. The waiting room has just died down there, so we're gonna formally start, I suppose. For anyone who's joining us, because I can see there's a couple of comments there saying they're joining us for the first time. Everyone who's normally comes with notes already, we'd love to hear your questions. Keep them coming throughout, and your tasting notes. We will also be giving away a bottle of each SKU tonight. So that's how exciting. The first one we're going to give away, which will be picked after this tasting, but it's for throughout the tasting. At some point, if you have a moment, if you just snap a picture of your tasting pack and set up, and tag us on either Instagram, the W Club on Instagram, or Facebook or Twitter, and we'll tomorrow we'll put all the ones you tagged us into an Excel sheet and randomly pick out a winner to send you a bottle. We've done this on a few of the Diageo tastings we've done, so there's probably a few of you on here who've already picked up a prize. And we will also be doing one for the best tasting note throughout. So please do let us know. Obviously, the more creative, the better, but it has to also be something that you can get from the whiskey, You have to be like, oh, wow, I can totally taste that. And then, Ali, you're going to ask a question at the end, are you, for the last prize?
Yeah, I think so. Nothing that will probably be in the chat. I think a lucky dip's kind of easier, unless you guys know the answers straight off the bat, then well done you. But I think closest to the ballpark figure, one of those nearest the bull kind of thing, will win the last one.
So we get that. I suppose we'll do that question towards the end, and that'll be another one. And then we have a fourth one that we will also be giving out tonight, but we haven't decided exactly how we're going to do that. So it might be given if there's a couple of really good tasting notes, or if there's a couple of really good tagging of us in the social media. 6 more people joined from the waiting room just there. So for those who missed us, we're going to give away a bottle of the SKU for people who tag their tasting setup in the W Club on any of the social media channels we're on. So yeah, just do get that in, and yeah, the extra SKU will be given to either one of the same 3 categories if it's too close to call, and a couple of them. So that's the kind of bit of housekeeping out the way. So as I say, we want to keep hearing your tasting notes and your chat, and it's always great to see Jessica in there with the first timer and a few others. So and Ali's put up the tasting order, which is the Mortlach, the Singleton, Glen, the Talisker, and Lagavulin. And I suppose that's enough listening to me anyway. And I'll let you introduce yourself, Ali, to the crew here.
Thank you very much, Luke, and thank you guys for joining. Welcome. It's my second of these tastings, and it's a real pleasure to host you all. And 4 fantastic whiskies, all cask strength, which I think is perfect for 7:30 on a Tuesday. So thanks, Luke, for setting that up. I think it's quite nice just to delve in on the deep end. I don't know how everyone's Monday was, but if it was anything like mine, this is a very welcome distraction to the rest of the week.
We were able to facilitate the Tuesday because the Champions League finished last week, for after the new year. So
we'll leave football chat out of it for my sake. But yeah, guys, so just to quickly run through the order again, we'll start with the Mortlach, we'll move over to the Glen and do the Talisker and Lagavulin, and finish with the big smoky ones, so to speak. But usually I work directly for Johnny Walker, and the master blenders would always tell me to start with the smokiest whiskey. We've had many arguments and polite discussion over whiskey as to why. They seem to think that if you can't pick up the delicate notes in the smoky whiskies, then you're never going to get anything off the back end of the rest that's yet to follow. And on the contrary, I think that it's nice to kind of delve into the softer whiskies, see what they offer, and then finish with the big smoky ones. And each one has its argument, but I'm in charge today, so we're starting with Mortlach. Still a big chewy whiskey. There's still an element of smoke in there. And for those of you that know your Mortlach, it's an old one, isn't it? It's the oldest whiskey in Dufton. It's a whiskey that is not recognised because no one really knows what's going on, but 2.81 times distilled. It's a whiskey that's big and chewy. So basically you've got 2 stills that will make a fruity malt, 2 that will make a very malty, rich cereal style malt, and then this big, chewy, fatty malt at the end. I was up at Mortlach 3 weeks ago, and I actually got to try the different new makes. So one is making a double distillation, the other one is making a triple, the other is making some quasi quadruple distillation between the two of them. The rest is blended together to create 2.81. I don't want to delve into it too much because I really can't explain it in very sensible terms to you guys. But let's just put it this way. It's called the Beast of Dufton because it's different to every other distillery in what is now known as the kind of capital of Scotch whisky. So 6 distilleries there, and Mortlach being this big, rich, chewy malt, which is perfectly paired with food. Normally at the end of a meal, but today we're kicking off our tasting with it. It's a non-age statement this year. The bottle comes in, I think, at about £250. The ABV is 57.8. And there is an element of smoke at the end. I saw someone put that in the chat, but it's a meaty whiskey. It's chewy, it's rich, it goes against the grain of every other Dufton distillery. It's not that light Speyside kind of fruity malt that we're kind of used to. It does something a little bit different, and still probably the most famous 8-letter distillery beginning with M in the region. Just pipping Macallan to that name sake. But
well, Macallan claim they're a Highland whiskey, don't they?
Yeah, well, whatever they want to do, no one cares. So a rich expression of Mortlach, meaty character, a lot of sweetness in there. There's a lot of almost demerara sugar, molasses on the forefront. The body's quite medium, is a really terrible word to use, but on the mouth it's rich texture. If you guys have got some water to hand, and I'm sure you all have, once you've tried it neat, please do add a drop, and it'll just open up that sweetness and give that fruitiness a little bit more of a chance to fight through the initial sweetness and that element of smoke and that chillness at the end. But please put your tasting notes in the chat, guys. This whiskey is refill American oak, and then it's finished in tawny port and red muscat seasoned casks. So we've taken that element of richness and sweetness, turned it up a notch, and that fruitiness we've really tried to bring out with the Mortlach. The 57.8 ABV is really going to strip that back. So what we're really looking for at the end of the palate is that wonderful kind of cherry, that blackberry cassis note coming off the back end with a hint of smoke.
I love that. That dark fruit note is amazing. We've got some great tasting notes coming in there. Roger Till says dark chocolate, cherry on the nose, more dark chocolate in the palate, finish long and rich. Burnt banana sweetness. Lovely dried berries as it opens up. Jamaica ginger cake from Craig. That's a good one. Oh my God, you might have converted me to Speyside Drams. That is rich, slightly smoky, not too floral. Gary says lovely hints of cinnamon and tin syrup. Pineapple is hitting the spot for me. And Mel says, sorry, just home. Which one are we on, please? So we're just started, Mel. We're just started in the Mortlach, so you haven't missed much. And yeah, Scott has answered Mel's question. So fantastic. I don't know. Sorry, we've got a few more in there as well. Baked banana, says Ian. The water just opens up smoke on the nose. There's dark chocolate with chili. That's an interesting one. Yeah, you can get those dark chocolate with chili flakes. I can definitely see that. That kind of working as a tasting note for this. I don't know what you think, Ellie.
Yeah, I think the Jamaican ginger cake, there's definitely that element of ginger, and it's so rich on the forefront, but then the fruit kind of comes through towards the end. There's definitely a ginger note for sure, and I think that's the spiciness of the alcohol. But once you add the water, the cassis, the cherry, and that chocolate, and I guess what we're perceiving as smoke might be a little bit of spiciness. So I like the chili chocolate kind of link as well. I think that's bang on the money for sure.
No, 100%. So you were saying, so this one's called Lore of the Blood Moon on the bottle. you want to explain to us how that works?
Yeah, I guess I can. I hate delving into what marketing thinks is a really good idea. I quite like just talking about the whiskey, but the lure of the blood moon. For those of you that haven't seen the packaging, you've still got the Mortlach in its bottle. It's got an owl, a black owl flying in front of a blood moon. Let me just try and find the story here. I'm not going to read this out like marketing would, but if any of you buy the bottle, there's a QR code on the back. If any of you win a bottle tonight, Black Forest Gatto indeed. If any of you win a bottle tonight, there's a QR code on the back and it'll do a augmented reality tasting for you. But as the legend goes, one fateful night, the moon turned blood red in the Mortlach sky and a mysterious alchemy came to pass. The beast of Dufton transformed under the sanguine glow and soared through the night sky, a mythic creature drawn upward by the mesmerizing crimson orb deep inside the Mortlach stills. Blood moon's influence echoed. Its seductive ruby richness and dark complexity transformed Mortlach itself with a rare and bewitching nature. I think it's marketing trying to do their best to describe all the tasting notes that you guys have just said. So this kind of dark ruby rich red, we've taken a very meaty whiskey, we've put it in refill American oak and then passed it into these really rich red casks. And I think they've done their best to kind of find a story for that. So yeah, it's
Rings of Power and Game of Thrones Eat Your Heart Out. With some more fantastic tasting notes coming in there. We've got for me this reminds me, or for Indians this reminds me of a nice dried chili powder. So that's interesting. Sitting in a cafe eating a dark chocolate and caramel muffin, says Phil. Warming, had to remove my sweatshirt, says Roger Till. You don't have to include that in the picture you tag online, Roger. Jonathan says Black Forest Gatto with chili flakes on top. Black Forest Gatto says with chili flakes, says David, straight away afterwards. So maybe that's maybe they're synced up. Maybe there's a copyright infringement there. I don't know. First taste of Mortlach won't be my last. Lovely. Love the spice and berry hit. Cherry on the nose for sure, says Chris. Yeah, so definitely the spice and fruitiness is really the theme in the tasting notes there. This one is £250, and you obviously get 15% off that as well. So it's not a, it is what it is. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on the kind of the price point this comes in at, Alistair.
No, not massively. I saw someone put in the chat, and I hope it's in a complimentary way, but it is unlike any other Mortlach, and I think with the way it tastes, and also the fact that it's a non-age statement, I think they're quite brave to do that. Mm-hmm. Most of the Mortlachs and the way we've kind of pitched the brand as being a luxury brand within the single malts that Diageo has, it's quite strange to see it without a non-age statement. And I wouldn't say that's a bad thing. I'd say what they're actually trying to do, and what Craig Wilson, who's part of the Johnny Walker blending team, who put all these whiskies together, I would say what he's trying to do is really concentrate on flavor, which is a big thing for Mortlach. It's normally just this big, heavy-hitting whiskey, and I think it's quite nice to see it with these wonderful finishes. And maybe, as a non-age statement, it was easier for him to balance out what is essentially a very big, hard-hitting whiskey. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm genuinely not just saying this. I think I'm a big fan of this. I luckily got to try this already before, and it's really, really impressive, I think, just personally. But James has asked there in the chat saying it's his first Mortlach, and there's a few obviously people commenting that it's their first Mortlach. What out of the rest of the Mortlach lane range, is there another particular one you'd recommend going to next? Would you move from this to the 16, or would you start with the 12? Or
I mean, if you like them and it's the first one you've tried, I don't know whether you're in a world of trouble now, because they don't come in cheap. But I love the 16. We did I think the 16 was for travel retail, which is now been released as a general age statement. 12, 20, and I was at the Whisky show in London. I'm sure some of you guys attended, but we had the new Midnight Malt, which was the 35-year-old Mortlach, which was absolutely incredible. But we're talking into the thousands there for that. But the 60s, I think it's a well-rounded big whiskey that everyone can get on board with, and it's a really true representation of what Mortlach has to offer. I find the 12 quite light at times. I find the 20 a little bit too, I don't know, a bit too much towards the Macallan side. I'm not a huge fan of everything being finished in sherry and that big rich kind of grip that it has on the palate. So 16 for me would be the go-to.
Fantastic, yeah, and that's what Tony C in the chat says. The 16 is the benchmark for him as well. Ami has asked, what does drive the price for this whiskey with a very being very high, but it's non-age statement? Is it primarily because of the finish or because of the brand? He's not taking anything away because it's a brilliant whiskey. They just clarify there, but
So I think for us, mainly Mortlach's one of those distilleries. Obviously, most of what we make at single malt distilleries out of the 29 we have across Scotland, most of it will end up in Johnny Walker. Obviously, Mortlach's a little bit of an exception to that, alongside Oban. But just the quantities that were available, the quantities that the master blenders had to play with in terms of making this special release, where we're trying to get Mortlach to how big it's becoming in Asia. So we had very limited quantities. That's the only thing that's driving up the price. And I guess there's always that argument about price and age and where the two meet. So I can see why people would maybe not want to spend that much money on a non-aged, but at the same time, you guys have now experienced the flavor. I think it's totally worth it. I think it's a fantastic dram. No,
it really is, and yeah, I'm a big fan. Definitely. Yeah, I don't know. I might need to buy another one because I'm all out here anyway.
Just the quantities available to us to use. That's it. We've had a few issues with getting enough stock out of Mortlach to do these kind of expressions with. That's it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's interesting. And Paul Francis in the chat says the Flora and Fauna 16 was superb. So is that a?
I wish I'd tried that. That stuff's gold dust.
Marvelous. So if you still have a bottle of that, Paul, hang on to it. Fantastic. Will we come on to the Glenord? Do you recommend that we kind of leave some as a side by side, or do you think that they're so different from the different distilleries that it's not worth doing, or what do you reckon?
I think it's nice to go back to them. Definitely in terms of aroma, if you've got a little bit left in each glass, like what I love doing as well is once we get to the end, the first smell of the Lagavulin, when we get onto that, what's really fantastic to do is maybe go all the way back to the Glenord or the Mortlach and then have a smell of it and how much different it smells once you get that element of smoke. And once we really start talking about the Lagavulin and you kind of picture yourself there at the Lagavulin distillery on Islay, we go back to Mortlach and straight back into Speyside, have a smell of that Mortlach whiskey, and it will be completely different, and there'll be all these little intrinsic notes that you haven't quite picked up on the first round, which I think is really nice to do. So definitely save a bit of each one, but I'm not in the business of telling people how to drink their whiskey anymore. I've shot myself in the foot a few times trying to do that.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's your whiskey. Drink it how you want it, but you can give some good advice. Gary has said that he's just noticed that the bottle that we have, somebody have here says Speyside, not Highland. Can you clarify just from your earlier comments? Is it, would you class with this? I thought this was made by ignorance. I thought this was classed as Speyside. Was it Speyside or Highland?
What more?
Yeah.
Singleton, yeah, Speyside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Gary says no, Glenord.
Glenord's Highland.
Sorry, you're right. He's coming about the Singleton of Glenord.
Glenord's Highland. So just up the road from Inverness city centre, probably a 20-minute drive, 25-minute drive, depending how sensible you drive and how quiet the roads are. But yeah, so Glenord is
Gary's right. Glenord is definitely Highland. Sorry, Gary, I thought you were talking about the Mortlach the way I read that, which is my My bad. Yeah, that you're right. The bottle says Speyside when it should say Highlands. So well pointed out. Apologies for any confusion.
What on the Glenord it says?
On our sample pack, it says it.
Okay, all right. I was just about to kill someone at Diageo. So the reason we're doing Glenord next, so we're a bit of geography, I guess, for you guys. So Mortlach's the oldest distillery in Dufton. 1 mile in one direction is Dufton, which is part of the Singleton, and a mile in the other direction is Glendullen, which is the other part of the Singleton brand. And for those of you that don't know, Singleton, as one of the biggest brands in single malt whiskey today, I think it's 4th biggest in the world now, is comprised actually of 3 distilleries. So Glendullen, Glenord, and Dufton. Sorry, I've done those in reverse order. So Glenord's the other one, and we're moving up to the Highlands. And what I love about Glenord is that it's this distillery that's gone through a lot of different changes. It sits on the River Ord, and it's one of these first, if you're coming up through Inverness, it's one of the first distilleries you'll hit before you start hitting the likes of Tomatin, Balblair, Clynelish, Glenmorangie on the way as well. And if you ever get a chance to do that journey and take it through that way and past Loch Ness and all the way up, it's a wonderful way to experience some whiskies because they're separated out quite nicely. But as the Highlands, I think if I got to choose one region, the Highlands would be my choice of whiskies. I love the distilleries up there. Clynelish is really where my heart lies, and it is a beautiful road trip, and there's so many wonderful stops on the way, whether it's at the end of Loch Ness, at the Fiddlers, or if you make your way up into Dornoch and stay there. There's the Thompson brothers as well, who are doing wonderful things with whiskey, and really making it their own. So this Glenord, most of the Glenord, so the reason it's divided into 3, most of the Dufton Singleton will stay here in Europe. The Glenord will go over to Asia because it's normally quite grassy. It has gentle spices to it. It suits that style of cuisine. And the Glendullen, which is the richer, maltier one with a sweeter body, will be sent over to the States. If you visit the Glenord distillery, the whole thing has been revamped. It now has a 20-seater bar in the middle of the visitor center, has an amazing shop and an amazing tour, and some amazing private tastings and everything else you can do there. So definitely go and check out Glenord. Once you pull up to the distillery, that unfortunately there's this disgusting building, which is one of our biggest malting floors in Scotland, which does maltings for the likes of Talisker or Rusk, Tianinic, and all these other places. Big stills, big distilleries. But once you pass that, you come around and you see this beautiful brick building, and that's Glenord, and it's this wonderfully efficient distillery. They all are at the Singleton. It's producing a lot of whiskey. This whiskey is 15 years old. It has been matured in refill American and European oak casks, and then finally finished in red wine casks, which I'm told are Bulgarian red wine casks. That information, I can't remember where I got it from, but it's on my brain. That's what I think. That's what I'm saying. That's what I was sticking with. So 15 years old. It's in at 54.2%. I'll let you guys do the aromas and some tasting notes before I start blurting out what I think, and I think that's easier for them to get on board with whatever they think they find.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great ones coming in. Before we get into them, Phyllis said great visitor center, and at the moment until March, W Club members actually get a 20% off a tour of Glenord. So there's a discount codes on the members hub online. So make use of your W Club membership and use that if you're up that direction. Roger says spicy apple and hazelnut pie on the palate. I love the hazelnut pie note. That's great. Martin says on the nose, woody, vanilla, acorns, ripe bananas, old leather wallet. Christian says getting fruity crumble with vanilla custard and sticky toffing on the nose. James says this smells fairly fruity, caramelized apples or apples and brown sugar. Jonathan sort of starts off all Danish and butterscotch, but the finish is red berries chocolate. Glen sweet peaches and vanilla. Sweet peaches, that's interesting. And James says tastes very apple strudel. Would go well with a fairly a fruity dessert here. Now I'm hungry too. So there's lots of pastry notes coming through there. I don't know what you think about that between Danishes and strudels and everything. Kevin has said very citrusy, caramel apples, licorice in the palate. And we've got vanilla honey cupcake sweetness to start off, and then the oak hits you. Start with some nice sweet plums towards the end too. Anything jumping out at you there, Ali, that you would like to think so good one?
Pencil shavings. What I can do, I've just pulled up the tasting notes. So Craig Wilson, I mentioned him briefly before. He's part of the blending team for Johnnie Walker. He put together the Lagavulin 10 for travel retail. He's done special releases before. But he's put together this whole series. So he's basically gone around, he's chosen the whiskies from each distillery, and then he's finished them, and he spent time doing that. And he would have, this would have been a project for him 3 years ago, which we're now tasting, which I think is always amazing how these guys have this amazing sort of, it's almost clairvoyance. Like they understand what the whiskey is going to taste like in the future. And I think it's quite the skill. But what I can do, if anyone's up for it, I'm happy to read out his tasting notes in terms of what it knows, palate and finish, if that would help anyone. And maybe we can find who's spot on the money according to the Johnnie Walker Master Blenders.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. Do you have them there now, or I could read a few? We've got some great more taste notes coming in here before you get to that. But
1 second. So on the nose, I don't know if there's any jumping out that are close to this, but Craig's put on the nose quite dry at first, backed up by spice, oak shavings. I saw the pencil shavings in there. Oak shavings and beechwood. Tart red berry fruit, creamy vanilla, which I guess links to the pastries, and a hint of wax. On the palate, he says smooth, mouth-filling texture, barley sugar sweet with a pinch of salt, and then light suggestions of gooseberry and white grape, with a dash of water, still a little bit tart, but still spicy, and the sweetness highlighted. And the finish, a little bit of pepper, still that element of spice, trace of fondant in the aftertaste. So yeah, I don't know if that appeases anyone for being bang on the money, then well done. But
that's
I quite like the goose.
Sorry, I was saying that's spooky because that's like literally to the word exactly what I was thinking when I tasted this. Like, it's mad.
Sure.
Martin has said palate smooth, especially after 2 drops of water, sweet, peppery, lemon curd, finishes peppery, dark chocolate, lingering. Christian says on the palate, sweet honey, barley, chili coated nuts and ginger. I like that. Barley sugar, goose gog. I don't know what that is actually. Sorry. Touch of salt. And Stefano's got his cat's gone now, but I don't know if anyone saw his cat there, was looking great. So apologies to anyone on the recording because you'll only be able to see either myself or Ali's face. But Stefano had his cat on his head and it was tremendous. Matthew said like a toffee apple eaten at Christmas at a Christmas market with a glass of Glugwyn. So fantastic note. Goosegog equals gooseberries in Cornwall. So there you go. Every day's a school day. We're learning about regional dialect as well as whiskey here today, Ali. What do you reckon?
But I like the gooseberry. I think pretty much everyone got that salt and that sweetness on the nose. But I love whiskies like this because as sweet as they smell, and then the taste is almost not exactly opposite, but it's drier, it's richer, there's a bit more. That's why I love Clynelish. It's that waxiness and that element of salt moving away from like the honey on the nose. It's a nice complex whiskey. And just to remind you guys, we've got 3 different casks going into there. So we've got the refill American and European oak, and then the matured wine season casks as well. So double matured wine season casks. Very Moorish. That's it. And I think that's it. It's the complexity that makes you want to go back for another sip. There's a lot going on there, and there's a lot to unpack, which I think why Glen's such a great distillery. They make fantastic whiskey.
No, it's fantastic. And from those tasting notes as well, it's really tart. It's fantastic. So this is £120, and obviously you'll be getting your 15% discount code at the end of this chat as well. So yeah, I think that's a really good price point for such a quality 15-year-old.
I can smell the Mortlach and see how different it smells. It's even if you haven't got a taste. I know some people have finished their whiskey, but it's always nice to go back to the previous thing that you've experienced, and it'll give you a whole new outlook on what you've just had. I think that's a really nice way to do it.
Yeah, I mean the Mortlach to me now really, like, you can really get the kind of like a caramelized note comes through a lot stronger when compared to the Singleton. I don't know if anyone else agrees. James got an interesting point in here. Says at the minute I'm preferring the Mortlach of the two. I just felt it felt a bit smoother. Not putting this down. I hope you're not. Jesus, that would be drastic. But I just enjoy the smoothness of the flavor of the Mortlach, much like Stefano's cat sliding in and out across Stefano's head. So there you go. No, it says sniff the bottle if gone, people. So that's a good tip. Yeah, get your nose into the empty little glass jar if you don't have any whiskey left.
That's bottle will do. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I probably do still lean more towards the Mortlach, but I really do like the Singleton, and as anyone who does these tastings regularly knows, you know, I always think you have to factor in price, which is not a criticism of you guys, Ali, but you know, I think the Mortlach is really tremendous, but you pay for that extra bit of tremendousness, you know. So it's all relative.
It is, and it's all down to personal opinion. The Mortlach I love, but hand on heart, I've never been a massive Mortlach fan. Like everything they've released in the past, it's never been my style of whiskey. That Singleton would be more to my taste. And as I said to you guys before, like Clynelish is where my heart lies. So I like that complexity, that kind of bite to my whiskey. I quite like that waxiness and that salty kind of finish, which is why I love Talisker, which is a great segue onto the next whiskey when everyone's ready.
Yeah, I think we could definitely give it a go.
So Talisker, guys, I don't know. I don't think I've met anyone who likes whiskey and doesn't like Talisker. It's one of those whiskies that would always fly the flag for bearing I guess the brunt of the argument that whiskey has terroir involved with it. You know, it's an element of place. Whiskey, as we know, or at least Scotch, we know is one nation's gift to the world. It's probably the most scrutinized spirit on the planet. But Talisker does a great job of, no matter where you're sat, you can really bring people to a place. And on Loch Harport, you know, on the Isle of Skye, there used to be the only distillery on the island. There's now a fantastic another one called Torabhaig, which I've recently visited as well, which was unbelievable, and the hospitality was great. So if you guys are ever visiting Skye, I'd recommend going to Torabhaig and then going to visit the new Talisker visitor centre, which has wonderful cafe, oysters. You can do that whole ritual with eating the oyster, pouring Talisker into the oyster shell and drinking out of the oyster shell. If no one on the call has done that before, please do it before you die, because it is probably the best food and drink pairing I've ever experienced. Nothing makes more sense than bringing that oyster shell brininess, that sea saltiness into Talisker, or at least putting Talisker in something that has lived in the sea and is full of salty brininess. It's a match made in heaven. The Talisker we're drinking today is 55%, 55.1. It's 11 years old. It's American oak, refill, ex-bourbon refill, and wine season casks as well. I have no idea about the wine, I'm afraid, at all. But I think Bourbon casks are from a lightly peated whiskey that's been stored in them before. So whether that's come from Talisker, whether it's come from anywhere else, I'm not too sure. I'm really sorry. I don't have the details on that. I can find out and pass them on to Luke, to pass it on to you guys. But again, would love tasting notes from you guys. But what I'd encourage you all to do with this whiskey, I know you're smelling it and trying it now, just try and give the whiskey 5 to 10 seconds on the palate. Just leave it there and just let it settle in, let your palate get used to it. Once you've given it that 10 seconds and it's got almost a little bit thicker, it's turned into almost this liqueur style, like Cointreau, like a spicy, salty Cointreau. Swallow that, give it a moment, and then just breathe in, and you should get that wash of smokiness. It's almost like standing right on the seashore. It's that maritime, seaweedy, brininess that starts to come over, and once you start breathing in, it really kind of hits home as to where this whiskey is made. And as I said before, it's a sense of place. All the whiskies made around Scotland are made by individuals. Where they're made affects the flavour. Who they're made by affects the flavour. And this does a great job of describing place. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. TCP, you'll get all that salt, seaweed, oyster shell. It's such a fantastic complex whiskey, and as I said before, and I'll say it again, I don't know anyone that likes whiskey and doesn't like Talisker. So cheers.
Marvelous. We do have Ian Matheson. I did say you might have met the first one that he doesn't like Talisker, so there you go. Maybe this will convert him. Kevin has said on the nose, maritime in feel with light spice prickle. The first impression suggests a beach bonfire of dry seaweed, then deep-seated notes of maritime saltiness and marine engines take over. Interesting. On a base of drying fresh linen. All these scents hold together well at reduced strength. Kevin really wants that prize. On the palate, smoothly oily in texture, with the taste is gloriously sweet throughout, and smoky spicy with a distinct fruity hint, all of which evokes an orchard scene through the smoke and mist. A fine salty balance in the middle leads to spiciness, leads onto a powerful chili pepper catch as you swallow. With a drop of water, the sweet fruitiness and saltiness comes into their own. Excellent tasting notes, Kevin. Jeff says, was a building site when I was there in April, did a tasting in a porta cabin. It's interesting.
I did that too.
Well, that's an experience in itself, Jeff. You're not going to forget that anytime soon. And Tony says subtle sweet smoke, less than the T10, more damp dunnage, mustiness, which isn't a bad thing. A little more medical than T10 on the palate, and the smoke is there. Chinese seaweed with 5 spice spangles, if you're old enough to remember them. I actually don't know what spangles are. I don't know if you know what spangles are, Ali. Spangles, yeah.
Don't know, maybe not the spangles I know. No comment.
Someone say, sorry?
Before. Someone say linen.
Yeah, that was in Kevin Cran's note. He says that the saltiness of marine engine takes over on a base of drying fresh linen. So, and Roger says Talisker, seaweed saltiness on the nose, on the palate oily, sweet and smoky fruits, finished gentle warming spice. I agree with that. Torbeg is a great visit, and we've got some great notes there. Green apple on the nose reminds me of sitting on the harbour side at Coverack, eating poached pears and cooked on a peaty, hearthy fire or heathery fire. This brilliant tasting note as well. Talisker on the nose, sweet vanilla, flavored tobacco smoke, sea breeze, toffee, and lemon peel. There's some great reaction to this. Getting a lot more engagement than our first two. I just feel instinctively. I don't know if that's because people have now had 2 whiskies and they've loosened up, or if it's just more evocative. But it's really great to see all the comments coming in there. Anything popping out there for yourself, Ali?
I think what you were just saying there, I think it's more evocative in a way. Like there's so much to unpack with Talisker, and I think the beautiful thing about a whiskey like Talisker is that it's each to their own. Like smoke can mean so many different things to people, and how they determine smoke. Dave Broom has an amazing book on Japanese whiskey, and he talks about smoke at the beginning of that, and he talks about smoke to him being Glasgow train station and cigarettes, and that smell. But no one from Japan that he knows what that smells like at 10 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock in the morning. You know, Glasgow train station while smoking a cigarette, and why would they? But that's where it takes you. And I think Talisker is one of those great whiskies that you can start to really divide everyone's tastes and everyone's opinions. The opinions are normally the same. I saw a few people put like it's not their go-to, or it's not anything like this, but you're never wrong when you're describing what you taste and what you experience. And I think what's great about Talisker is that it's one of those fireside drams that has this element of seashore or cigars or however you unpack it. And I think that's great. It's just one of those things that will always be a discussion point. It'll always divide the crowd. And I think that's the best thing about whiskies like this. There's so much going on. But what I'll do is I'll just read again what Craig's put, because we've had so many tasting notes and some absolutely spectacular ones. So thank you guys. Like you're doing half my job for me, because the next time I do a tasting with this, I'm stealing a lot of your trademark stuff here. So on the nose, Craig says maritime in feel with a light spice prickle. First impression suggests a beach bonfire of dry seaweed, then deep-seated notes of maritime saltiness and marine engines. Someone put engines before. Very good, very good. On the base of drying fresh. Is someone cheating here?
I think Kevin might have just copy and pasted those. A better fresh linen. You've been run those.
That's it. On the palate, oily texture, smoky spice, distinct fruits. There's obviously that sea mist note coming in, and chili pepper. For those of you that know Colin Dunn and have had the pleasure of being hosted by Colin, he will always talk about Talisker and the Red Hot Chili Peppers being, a great band, but also a great tasting note for Talisker. So Red Hot Chili Pepper, that capsicum spice, it's not chili heat hot, it's not fresh green chili, it's just that nice rounded chocolate red chili we were talking about before. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
No, that's fantastic. And we've also been informed that what was the tasting note is a squared sweet from the 60s. I've lost that what they were called now. But there you go. So another new thing we've learned. There is some great tasting notes, folks. So I am reading them all and memory banking some of the best ones. But obviously, if we just spent the whole tasting reading out each other's tasting notes, it wouldn't be the most the most entertaining of nights. But they are fantastic. Amia had a great one there, which I'm trying to find. There was, if you need to define the characteristics of Talisker, this has to be the benchmark. Literally captured everything that a distillery and the terroir offers. So I think that's short, concise, but definitely rings true. Mel says, keep it in the palate for 10 seconds, really fetches the heat out. Both sides of my tongue feel like chili in the cheek, in my cheek pouches. What did you say the ABV on this was again? It's up in the 50s. Was it 55.1 according to the bottle we have here? You wouldn't think that.
No, it's a bit softer, but I think with Talisker, everyone expects a big whiskey, so it kind of comes in that nice rounded fashion. Like it's got that honey sweetness at the start, it's got the saltiness at the end. It suits a big ABV. Talisker always has, and for those of you that have tried Talisker 10 or 18, like the classic distillery strength is 45.8, so it's always been fairly high, and I think whiskey kind of deserves an ABV that high.
Yeah, no, excellent. And this one's called the Lustrous Creatures of the Deep, but we won't ask you about that, Ellie, don't worry. Or the depths, sorry. But there you are. Marvelous. This, I must say that the finish is incredibly long on this. But it might be about time to come on to the Lagavulin. I don't know what you think.
Yeah,
While you're doing that, I'm just gonna let you guys know that this Talisker is £110, and obviously you'll get the 15% off at the end. So I think that's not a bad. This is probably my favorite so far, actually. And the first time I tried these, I preferred the Mortlach to this, but this is really really coming up for me. And Martin says Lagavulin. Now we're talking. So
yeah. Here we go. Sorry. Lagavulin. So Isla, part of that golden triangle, sitting between Ardbeg, Lefroy, and Lagavulin. Each are, I mean, stone's throws apart from each other. And what I love about that part of Isla is that there's 3 distilleries very close to each other who've had their troublesome past and had a few arguments here and there, and we can delve into it later if you wish. But each of those 3 distilleries, Ardbeg, Lefroy, and Lagavulin, each produce their own different smoke. And what I love about it is that Lefroy is an oily smoke. It's TCP, it's dry, it's like someone's taken a load of wet grass and dumped it onto a bonfire. Ardbeg is a dirty smoke, it's rich peat, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all. It's lovely rich peat, it's damp wood, it's like walking into a study, like an old study that hasn't been sat in for a while. And then Lagavulin is this rich sweet smoke. It's leather jackets, cigar boxes, and the rest of it. And how the 3 of them get on like that is absolutely amazing. And they're 3 completely different brands, but so close to each other, and 3 completely different whiskies. With Lagavulin as a whole, you can stand in the middle of the distillery in the courtyard. You can see what is now, I think, the tasting room or the bar. Lagavulin is where Malt Mill used to be, and Malt Mill's a distillery that doesn't exist anymore. But within the Lagavulin grounds, as they are today, you have Lagavulin and is it Ardmore is the other one. So each of those 3 distilleries are all sat on one site. They used to take whiskey from Lagavulin when they were not meant to be making whiskey legally. They used to take it over and bury it in the coffins of the church over the road. Lagavulin is rich in history. The church over the road from Lagavulin, the Lagavulin Church, is one of the oldest houses of worship in Europe. It's a place full of history, full of whiskey making knowledge. And if you get yourself down there and you find yourself in a Lagavulin warehouse with Pinky, you'll be absolutely blown away on the complexity of what is a very much rich, heavy whiskey. The 12-year-olds I've tried before from Lagavulin, and this is the general staple for the special releases, will always release a Lagavulin 12. This one, and hand on heart, I mean this, I'm not just saying this today, this is my absolute favorite. It's in at 57.3%. It's American oak refill and virgin casks. And what I think that's done is just dry it out a little bit. It's taken away that element of sweetness that Lagavulin has, and the complexity, and I'm going back to complexity like I did with the Glen is absolutely fantastic. It's a really delicious golden whiskey that I think it tastes nowhere near 57.3%. I find this really smooth. I find this a very easy aromatic whiskey that can be enjoyed straight out the bottle. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and one of the best Lagavulin 12s I've tried from the Solstice collection.
No, that's fantastic. No, it really is great, and there's some great tasting notes already coming in. Tony C says lager, pickle juice nose. Where's the smoke? Oof, there it is on the palate, though. A bit of pickle back there too. Smells of wet woodland walks. Incredible complex but smooth. On the nose, November 5th, old oil drums, roast faggots, peaches, decaying seaweed, lovely. Gary says, a really evocative dram. Reminds me of having smoked mackerel on the coast, a complex, oily seaside bonfire in the mouth. Definitely, Scott says, definitely being battered by the waves in Ireland now. Totally a full experience of a smoky peat flavors, worth every penny, as avoids a treacherous winter boat trip. smooth textures with citrus acidity and full of chili spice. Lagavulin bacon butty on the nose, palate peppery, woody finish, oaky. The umami seeps shroomage is there from the wet forest floor, drier than the Talisker, very sophisticated. I like it. Kat says, okay, it might be heresy, but Lagavulin is surely the love. This Lagavulin is surely the love child of Lagavulin 16 and Ailsa Bay Sweet Smoke. I can see where you're going with that, Kat. We did a fantastic deconstruction of Ailsa Bay here a while back. I was also very lucky earlier this year to do a Dunwich tasting or warehouse tasting with Pinky in Lagavulin. I must say it was absolutely tremendous. So I would recommend for anyone who gets there. He told us he was retiring after this year, but some other locals in the pub that night he says it every year. So I don't know if you've any insight into that, Ali. Keep the tasting notes coming, and I'll pop back to them in a second. When was the last time you were over visiting Islay, Alistair?
Yeah, just over a year ago, I think now. In fact, no. I went over to open the Leela Visitor Centre 5 months ago. So 5 months ago, and we popped by Lagavulin. For those of you that know, we've done a lot of releases with Nick Offerman, and he's been quite the Lagavulin fan. I don't know if anyone's seen the latest video around the new release, but Pinky's actually featured in that as like a Hollywood movie star, so it's quite good fun. But the guy deserves all the recognition he gets. You know, he's worked at that distillery for 40, 48, 50, I think near on 50 years now. Like the man knows more about Lagavulin than anyone else on the planet, but in a way that will just blow your mind. Like the way he talks about it, it's far removed from what they're doing production wise. It's what it means to him and what it means to the island. Like no wonder he tells people he's retiring, because he's a sought after guy. Out of the 3,000 people on the island, like he's definitely my favorite person. But if you guys make it over to Islay, go and visit. Kalila is also worth a visit. But I like those tasting notes before. Sweet, briny. It's got that pickle juice note to it as well. Someone put about the 16 being the staple and being the focus point, and I'd completely agree with that. I think Lagavulin 16 is what got it the cult following. It's that rich Coca-Cola cherry smokiness that everyone's grown to love. I think the 12-year-old brings out the freshness that Lagavulin can also offer, which you miss with the 16 sometimes. So.
No, fantastic. And you also get a discount on Kaylee, Lagavulin and Talisker visitor centre tours as a W Club member, so make the most of that. We had there's some great tasting notes coming in, so keep them coming in, folks. We will go back to them again. But Christoph asked, is there any plan, sorry, let me find that question. Will we see any more of virgin oak casks in the next couple of years with Lagavulin, do you know?
It's a big question to unpack. I don't know. Virgin oak seems to be the least popular in terms of finish amongst the whiskey heads. I kind of like it for some whiskies, although not to get political, I think the biggest threat to whiskey at the moment is the cost of goods. Brexit and all these other things haven't helped. So virgin oak's going to become more and more expensive in terms of what we're aging in. Casks are maybe going to get older. I don't know. I can't honestly say. I haven't looked at it in like a 5, 10, 12-year plan on what we have here, but everything's going up in price, whether it's glass bottles, whether it's the cost of casks, wood, everything else. Like it's I don't know, it's not a worrying time for Scotch at all, but I think getting fresh virgin oak casks to a distillery to do big releases is becoming quite hard.
Interesting, because he says the reason because the Feis Isle Lagavulin and Caolila were both virgin oak finishes. And Emia pops in with a virgin oak just overpowers all the other notes and puts so much of the wood and oak influence on this. Would love to see how a heavily peated whiskey could mature in virgin oak, but for how long. And Kevin, and maybe in line with that, Kevin Cran also asked about the that there's no sherry influences in this lineup. Is that a conscious decision? Is that the part of the idea, or
in these four? There's not. There is in the rest of the series. The Klein Leash is finished in both Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez casks. I'm sure there's another one as well. But again, like a sherry cask costs 3 times as much as a bourbon cask, maybe more at times. Again, these costs are definitely affecting things. I agree with again, it's each to their own. I feel like some whiskies need to be dried out. I feel some whiskies can benefit from virgin oak. I know people that are big whiskey heads who absolutely hate it because you're just adding woodiness to what is essentially a very well-aged Scotch. I don't know. Everyone, each to their own. But I like where we're heading with more experimental casks. I think some of the releases I've seen from Glenfiddich, taking my Diageo hat off, but you know, the likes of IPA casks. I love the cider brandy casks they did, the new Orchard edition. I think there's room for experimentation, and I feel that, you know, the SWA are releasing more and more kind of avenues for us to go down. You know, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, tequila, you know, ex-tequila casks or mezcal casks, and we've done that with Lagavulin, which was absolutely fantastic. So I feel the more stuff we have access to, the more we can experiment, the better. But at the moment, it's becoming harder and harder to get hold of these products.
No, interesting. What was it? There was a comment there from Martin about how that most of these are 55% plus, but they're all smooth and not overpowering. Each displayed the characteristics of its home distillery and region brilliantly. Little, if no alcohol burn for such high percentage drams. So that's high praise. And James has asked, including the rest of the special releases, so not just tonight's drams, do you have a favorite one or one that you wished we were trying here tonight?
From the special releases?
Yes.
I would recommend to everyone. So I have my five favorite whiskies of all time. Years ago, we did a Cambus 40-year-old heavily aged grain whiskey, which Cambus doesn't exist anymore. Cambus will never be made again, but that whiskey is in a new stratosphere for me of whiskey. The Cambus 40-year-old. If you ever find a bottle, buy it, because that is one of the best whiskies I've ever tried. What I love from this year's special releases, the Castbridge 26, grain whiskey when it's aged well. Castbridge, I know we don't see much of. I mean, we see it probably in 3 litres on optics in weird pubs around Scotland, but fantastic whiskey. I love my grain whiskey, and when it's aged like that, I think it can do wonderful, wonderful things. As a massive fan of Klein Leash, I wasn't the biggest fan of the Klein Leash this year, but from everything else that's coming out or coming out recently, I love the Lagavulin mezcal cask. I loved some of their releases over the last couple of years. So yeah, Lagavulin's where it's at for me. Klein Leash, any of them, but the from this year's special releases, the Castbridge 26, really, really good.
No, fantastic. Martin has kicked off the rolling order of which everyone's favorite, where he says that there's a 4-way tie for first place, so that's high praise. So we do want to hear what your favorite is. The virtual tasting code to get the discount is WSVT15SOR, and while everyone's firing in their order of preference, Ali, you've got to ask a question that's going to determine where one of these bottles go. What's it going to be?
So I'm just looking at these numbers. I like 3, 4, 1, 2 as well. Talisker, Lagavulin, Singleton. Sorry. Like Singleton last. That's harsh.
One of them's got to be last, you know.
So if everyone wants to stop typing, well, I'm just gonna, whoever pops up first. I don't want to be the judge of this because I'm hosting, so I'm gonna Luke. take the bearings. So if everyone wants to stop typing in their favorites, I'm going to ask a question, and this question is to win a bottle of the Singleton, if you don't mind, Luke.
Yeah, that's fine.
So the question is, guys, to the closest million, how many litres of alcohol does Glen produce a year?
Ooh, that's interesting. And they're straight in there. So Scott has said 450, Russell has said 74, Graham is 3.5. 74 and 450 would be very impressive. That would be big scale. Ina said, is that 600,000 or 60,000? That's 600,000. Krista says 509,000. 40 million says Gary, 12.4. There's a lot of answers going in there.
Gary, so I think Gary got there first. Oh no, sorry, Ian D got there first. I was going to give it to Amy with 12, which was a really good guess. I imagine that was straight off the bat. Was it Amy? But yeah, Ian D came in with 11.
Yeah, there's Emmy said 12 and Ian D said 11.
Yeah, unlucky, but that was a really good first guess. But Ian got it spot on the money. He was first, 11.
Marvelous. Well, Ian, if you want to just type your email address, direct message to me in the chat, and I'll get in touch with you either later tonight or first thing in the morning about getting those sent out. I'm also going to have to pick a tasting. I don't know if there was anything that popped out to you while we were going. There was some good ones, really good ones tonight, but I can't think of anyone that really sticks in my head.
I loved whoever stole the tasting notes directly from Craig.
I don't think we can reward that kind of behavior, Alistair. Like, that's setting a danger precedent for these tastings going forward. But
it's the dog eat dog world at the moment. So
that's true. I'll keep that in mind. And I'm just going to scroll back through and see. There was one about a wet forest floor that I absolutely loved. There was just something very evocative about it in that moment when we were all sipping that whiskey.
And the Jamaican ginger for the Mortlach I really liked as well. But I'll let you choose, man.
I think yeah. I mean, whoever was talking about a damp forest floor, if you just private PM me your email address, and I have two, but we have an extra bottle, so I think we might go with the Jamaican ginger as well. So if that was you, just private message me quickly the email address, and I'll ping back. And you can't cheat because I get a transcript of this chat afterwards, so I'll be able to double check that no one was being robbed. And
I think
Russell has said if there's a prize for best guest cat appearance, I know who wins that. And I think that's very true. We'll see, Stefano. We might be able to sort you out with something. And you're also you come on here so regularly, both of you. So then there's the cat.
Stefano's background as well.
His background is tremendous. Yeah.
Cats and whiskey. There you go. Klein leash all over. What was I going to say? And then social media. If there's a good picture of your tasting tonight and your glasses or wherever you are, cats on heads, whatever it may be, I'll let Luke pick the best picture out of the bunch. But if you just tag obviously the W and Luke or myself in that'd be great.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I mean, I would have said a brand, but I wasn't sure. Do Special Releases have their own page, I presume?
No.
Yeah. I should get Klein Leash for the cat. You don't even have Klein Leash for the tasting. Let's see what we can do. I can't make any promises, especially after 4 whiskeys, but I'm a very caring and empathetic person, so we'll see. All my friends say I'm great. So just going back to before we finish, just looking at some of these the people's preferences, and it seems like between Laga and the Talisker, from what I can see, seems to be kind of shading it. Ali, it's been really fantastic, and I hope everyone's enjoyed tonight. And if this is your first time, that you'll give us another roll. Most of these tastings are only 20 quid, so I think for the liquid and the bit of chat, hopefully you enjoy it enough. Is there anything you want to part with before we finish up, Ellie?
No, just the usual, like, thank you all so much for joining, and to the newcomers, like, please come back, because it's a great way to meet people and delve into the world of whiskey, because this is, this is just what one company offers, and there's so much out there. Like, it's lovely to see you all, and thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well said. And there's still time, folks, to buy Deanston. If you haven't, it's on Thursday. So if you're in the UK on the mainland and you order tomorrow, it should still be there by Thursday, fingers crossed. And then next week we have Cardrona Distillery, which is New Zealand. So that's, broadening your horizons. If you haven't bought one of those, try some New Zealand whiskey. And it's going to be announced, they're going to be on sale on Thursday. Will actually be one with Dunville's, Ecklinville Distillery in Northern Ireland on the Ards Peninsula. That's one of my favorite brands of all time. So please do join that. Ali, thanks again for coming on, and it's your second time this year. Hopefully we'll see you again. And Steve has asked, is the hedonism back in stock? I'll find that out, Steve. And the Deanston should have been today, and if not, it will be tomorrow. And the hedonism as well. And I'll send out an email alert to everyone who bought those packs when that is back in. So don't worry. So thanks again, everyone, and thanks again, Ali. Sorry, the Victoriana is what I meant there. They corrected me in the chat, so you're dead right.